Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Atronet Network. And this is our journal club dedicated to chats. And today we will be discussing careers outside academia. We have the pleasure today of having two speakers with us. One is Elisa Martini, which is an editor for Nature Cardiovascular Research. And the other is Zofia, and apologies for the pronunciation, Swiatczak, which is a strategic account manager for Editco Bio. Actually, both of them, they will introduce themselves again in a minute. Before we start the session, we have prepared a few questions just to understand where we are and like what would be the interest of the audience today. Over to you, Mel.
Great. So to kick off the session, we thought it would be great to get to know our public. If you want to join, if you've done Mentimeter before, you can maybe join this Zoom link that I'm about to show you. Sorry, it's not a Zoom link, but you can scan the QR code or go to www.menti.com and enter this code below. So there are two questions that we wanted to start the session with to just kick off the presentation. So I will also join myself. And let me know if you have any issues joining. Okay, so I think we have here 3 people that joined. 4, 5. Okay. I think we might have something in the chat. Okay. Okay, great. Maybe I can go to the next question. So here it's an open question. So what career stage are you at? Okay, so then we can see that, yeah, so I have PhD students, postdocs, and then junior faculty members. So mostly postdocs interested in careers outside of academia. Anyone wants to comment on that? Yeah, I think this is also our journal clubs are mostly also targeting PhD students, postdocs. So I don't think we get many master students joining our journal clubs usually, but maybe something we can talk about later. Okay, so the next question is, were you aware what are your options outside of academia? And here we can get some percentage of what people think. So I think some people have some knowledge to some extent about careers and options outside of academia, but there's also some people who don't have enough. And I can say you're at the right spot. So today we'll exactly be discussing some career options outside of academia for people, doing their PhDs or transitioning a little bit after a PhD, trying to look for what they would like to do. So this is good. So most of the people have some knowledge to some extent about options outside of academia, but I think a lot of us really need to know more. So that's why our speakers today that's why we have our speakers today to give us some more information about that. So I think that's it for me. I will stop sharing and I will give the stage to our first speaker, Elisa, if you would like to share your presentation.
Sure. Okay. Here it is. Please let me know if you see it. Do you see the presentation?
You just need to switch the presentation mode. Other than that, it's all good.
Yeah, sure. It's just again. Okay, here it is. Do you see it now in the presentation mode?
Not yet.
I think we still we still see it with the notes.
I switched to presentation mode, I swear. Not sure why. I tried again. Did it work this time? No.
Looking the same.
No, it's looking the
I
same.
think you need to
Restart?
turn off the presentation mode, then go full screen, and then
Okay.
share the full screen or something like that.
Let's do
That
it.
tends to work.
Okay.
Yeah, it was working before, but
Yes, it did.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
No, I'm not. It's just okay. Let's see if it works now. Did it change?
Brilliant.
Yes.
Now I
Okay.
can see it all.
Now
Yeah.
it works.
Great. Thank you for your patience. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Elisa Martini. I'm an associate editor at Nature Cardiovascular Research, and I'm really happy to be here today to discuss with you career beyond academia. So I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to this discussion. What I'm going to talk about are very personal reasons, and it's my very personal career path, and it could apply to you or not. But what I hope you will find useful and interesting are the take-home message and talking about with having a different point of view. They asked me to give you a little bit of background on my academic career. So this is how I picture my academic career when I was undergraduate student or a PhD student. So I thought I was climbing a mountain, and the ultimate goal was to reach the top, become the head of a lab, having my own research line. And I thought each step on the mountain was predefined. What has often happens in life and in science, nothing is set in stone, and you need to be proactive and face changes and challenges. So I started out as an undergraduate student in Professor Marino Scalli-Curdi's lab. He was the head of the Adaptive Immunity Lab at Humanitas University in Milan, and my thesis was on maternal fetal tolerance. So at the time, I really wanted to work on autoimmunity, immune tolerance, regulatory T cells. So I was really happy to have this thesis with him. And with some of the results collected during my thesis, we ended up with a small publication. So when he asked me to stay for the PhD, I was thrilled. I was really happy. But here comes the first change in my career. So I didn't work on something related to autoimmunity, but I ended up working in a close collaboration with the group of Professor Gianluigi Condorelli on the role of adaptive immunity in heart failure, atherosclerosis, and age-related heart failure. So again, we had interesting publications, so I was really happy, and I thought to stay longer in Marino's lab and do a first postdoc where we discovered self-antigens driving T-cell response in heart failure. And so I used to joke about the fact that I really wanted to work on autoimmunity. So at the end, we transform heart failure in an autoimmune-like disease. And this just came out this year, actually. And so after the first postdoc, I was supposed to change lab and to have a different experience in a different lab, maybe change subject or try with different techniques. So, and I was supposed to go abroad, but for personal reasons, I didn't want to. But looking at my ultimate goal, I really wanted to generate regulatory T-cell-based therapy for cardiovascular disease. So I decided to move to a place in Milan where I really could learn techniques that could apply to this project. So I moved to Professor Chiara Bonini's lab, the Experimental Hematology Lab in San Raffaele Institute. And there I was working on a project on the generation of Treg-based cell therapy for autoimmune disease. And that's where trouble started, because it was a very challenging project and I was working on my own. And also the next step was supposed to be reaching economic independence. So I started to write grants, but there was even more challenging than my postdoc project. And so at the time I was at the crossroad and I was wondering what to do next with my career. And it was a sort of fate crisis for me, because I thought I was meant to climb that mountain. So I was very proactive about it. So I signed up for a mentor program that was held by the Italian Immunology Society. I kept writing grants. I went to the first Cardioimmunology Congress to talk with other scientists from my my same background, to have other point of view, see in other countries where they were at and what was the next step. But here is what really happened. So COVID pandemic came. So changing lab during the pandemic was really, really hard. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but social isolation didn't make the change easier. And then in my case, and this is what gets really personal, life happened. So I had my first kid, and maternity is really is a really difficult time in a way, and having to deal also with challenges at work just made me think that maybe I was not destined to this and maybe there was something else for me out there. So that's where I found a job advertisement. It was a job advertisement for an associate editor at the Nature Cardiovascular Research Journal. And one of the location was Milan. So for personal reason, again, I didn't want to move from Italy. And so I just thought it was fate. And I sent my application to the journal, and I got selected. And here is what I think takes to become an editor. You need broad scientific curiosity and knowledge, because you're going to read many papers outside of your area of research. And these two are very specific ability related to the editor job. And then you need what it takes for many other jobs. So you need to have problem solving ability, and also you need to be able to meet deadlines. You need to have communication and interpersonal skills, because you're going to write a lot of emails and interact with many people, and always in a very polite and professional way. And you need to be fluent in English. So as I said, I sent my application. I went through a very thorough selection, and then I received a 5-month training once I joined the journal. And so here is also a list of what are the duties and responsibilities when you are an editor. So in general, as you may imagine, you are responsible for handling original research papers. You make the first decision, so you assess whether there is novelty, you read the context, you see if the conclusions are well supported, what are the implications of the manuscript. And so you check the first decision, either reject or send out to peer review. And then for manuscript you send out to peer review, you have to identify the type of expertise necessary to assess the manuscript. and you oversee the review process. It means you identify the right experts, you customize the letter, you interact with them. Once you receive the report, you might need clarification because some parts might be not as clear as the reviewer thought. And then you make editorial decision based on the expert advice. And then we have also a long list of what are called front half content. So we have review articles, perspectives, and comments. They are mostly commissioned by the editorial team. So we discuss together which kind of topic we would like to cover and how we envision the article to be developed. We identify the right person to write it, and we commission the articles. And for the front half articles, we also are in charge of line editing, and we oversee the figure redrawing process. And then we write research highlight. I don't know if any of you are familiar with those, but are short articles highlighting research articles published in other journals. And we attend conferences and we do lab visits. And this is a great chance to meet in person with authors and potential referees to build also personal relationship with them. So here's just a summary of what is the workflow of a manuscript in our journal. This is useful both to understand what an editor does, but also what happens to your manuscript when you are submitting. So the manuscript will end up in the folder of the editor who's going to read it, make the assessment. We can either ask the opinion of someone else in the team, and we decide if we want to desk reject the manuscript or send it out for peer review. In the case of rejected manuscript, we always offer transfer to other journal in the family, and we can receive appeals also on rejection for a manuscript that they're not gone through peer review. And then after recruiting the referees and reading the reports, it's the editor who decides whether the manuscript is ready for acceptance or needs to be revised, or again, could be rejected. And again, in this case, we always offer transfer, and we can receive also appeals. So the organizers also asked me a short overview of what we look for manuscript to be published in our journal. And we aim to showcase exciting advances in the cardiovascular and hematology research field. We want to publish engaging commentary and reviews articles. We aim to offer great publishing experience to authors, so we try to be as quick as possible with the decisions, because we know time is really precious for authors, for reviewers, for everybody. We promote inclusivity in science, and we encourage transparency, integrity, and data sharing. So these are all the topics covered by the journal. So as I said before, we look for cardiovascular and hematology research. We have both basic translational and clinical research. We also publish epidemiological studies. We have different kind of backup content. So those are the research article. We have the letter, which is a short format, and sometimes can lack the mechanism of the results described. Then we have the articles. In this case, we look for a significant conceptual novelty, and those are more complex studies, and we tend to ask for the mechanism. And then we have research and technical reports. Those are, well, in case of research, those are usually large data set or with really high reuse value. And we always ask to, so those are usually data set that can, with authors, with with what authors can generate new biological insights, and we tend to ask for a proof of concept of the utility of the resource and some validation of the main results. And for technical report are usually new approaches, new animal model, new techniques. And we ask again for a proof of concept, evidence that the method can generate new biological insights that could not be generated with the existing methods. So we also need some benchmarking with what has been published before. And also we have analysis. So in this case, our new analysis of existing data. And again, new data needs to be generated with the new analysis of publicly available data set. This is the long list of front-end content that we have. The consensus statement is only a commission type of article, but for the others, we can also receive submission. And so when we do the first assessment of a manuscript, this is important to know. It's not important that the manuscript is put in style with the journal. This is something that can come later on. You have also the possibility to opt in the double-blind peer review, so the manuscript can be completely anonymized and the reviewer will not know any information about the authors. And of course, you need to include a cover letter. And what do we look for in a manuscript? As I said many times, we look for conceptual advance, but also we look for relevance to our authorship, to our readership, and support of the main conclusions by the data, and other things that can be a nice addition to the manuscript are physiological relevance or relevance to humans, so proving some translationability of the results. Mechanistic insights, as I said, it's something we aim for, but does not apply to all type of articles. And we value the resource and the technological advance. This is true for the resource paper and the technical report. And I want to give you a quick tip when you write cover letters. This is your elevator pitch. So this is your chance to confidentially tell the editors why your findings are so important, and it's your chance to put in context your article. So do not underestimate the cover letter. And also it's your chance to put reviewer suggestions. In this case, they do not need to be your friends or your mentors or supervisor, but just need to be people that you think they can deeply understand all facets of your study because they work in the same field. And of course, you can ask exclusion. We accept up to 3 individuals for a direct competitor, and we always honor those requests. And of course, you can add, I don't know, special circumstances like back-to-back publication or competing papers, you know, are submitted somewhere else. So you need the reviewer process to be very quick. And last thing about the reviewing process of a manuscript, I want to say that we aim to address. We usually customize the letters to tell the authors what needs to be done during the revision, what is a to-do list for us to send back the manuscript to the referees, because we tend to avoid many rounds of revisions, and we do not want to bother the referees if the revision was not done properly. And this is my slide with the take-home message. So the first thing that I want to say, and it could be I mean, it wasn't clear for me when I was in academia. Your academic career is not set in stone. You have the ability to change it if you need to. There is a whole world of possibilities outside of the academic world. So not only editors, but also you can work in industry. You can do whatever. You can be a scientific consultant for a financial company. And then the last but more important thing, and I needed to hear this when I was a postdoc, is your job does not define you. So your value as a person is not through your scientific accomplishment. And with that, I want to thank you. It's just this slide is also some indication if you want to ask to meet with the editors of Nature Cardiovascular Research, if you want to pitch us some exciting new manuscript. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elisa. That was a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Elisa. Fernando, would you like to take questions now, or should we?
I took a second to pause because I'm thinking about this. I believe it would be brilliant to hear Zofia as well, because I think they have two different angles of career outside academia. So it would be nice to hear them both. What do you think before we move forward?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can start sharing then.
Please, Zofia. Yeah.
Let me go in here. Let me know if you can see everything clearly. Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you for inviting me, Melody and Fernando. I mean, it's always nice to share the experiences from the past, and as Elisa mentioned, that sometimes when you look at your career, it's nice to look back at it rather than, having some milestones in your career that lead you to the place. But finding the happiness in the work environment is very crucial, I think, for every one of us. And finding your path sometimes can take you different ways, essentially. So I work at Ethical Bio, and I'll mention that in a second as well. But you can see a different logo here. It's called Lab to Sales. So if you find this information during this presentation important to you, or if you want to expand on it, I have a side project which is called Lab to Sales, and essentially that's where I can help people with the transition on top of what I'm going to cover today. So if you have any questions, or if you wanted to continue the journey, it's completely free. It's more for me like a passion project to help people with that kind of move. So, I mean, it's quite funny because I also think about the career, or where you want to be as a mountain, that you have a target at top. So it was similar story to me. And for me, I think deep inside I knew I wanted to be in sales, but I also wanted to be connected to science as much as I can be. So for me, it was this dilemma of I want to be a scientist. I want to be doing and do cool science, but I would like to move to sales. So how do I connect the two dots in a way? And then, finding this one particular thing on the way is very challenging because you come across obstacles, so things that block you on the way. The dead end, sometimes you need to literally go back because maybe you chose the wrong path in the first place, or sometimes we get to the too challenging path for the abilities that we have at the moment. So all of these things, I think, need to be considered whenever you trying to make a move. But there are the ways that can help you navigate through that. So my name is Zofia, as I mentioned. My surname is pronounced Swiatczak, and I can swear that everybody can pronounce it because if you think about, and I can walk you through it, I have a moment. Essentially, think about the fast car passing by, and you say, it's a sound sounding like Świąt, right? That kind of sound. You finish it with the T, so it's Świąt. And then, Chuck Norris is a name, so you basically say Chuck at the end. So it's Swiatczak, a very Polish surname. But yeah, I've been in sales for 6 years, but I would say in a commercial role for about 7 to 8. And currently I'm a global strategic account manager at the Editco Bio, which is a company which is American. And we essentially provide cell models, custom cell models for customers. And we use CRISPR to generate those cell models. So if you ever need a knockout, knock-in, and things like that, that's essentially what we do to help you move your science forward. But I was kind of at the crossroad at the end of my master's degree, and I was thinking, and I was at that point in Poland, and I was thinking, what should I do? Should I consider doing the PhD and focusing on one specific area of expertise, or should I do something else that will allow me to expand on knowledge, but not limiting myself to one particular area? And I am very active. I love learning new things and talking to lots of different people. So I just couldn't commit to one specific project and just stay in there for 5 to 8 years sometimes, because that's the reality of doing PhD in Poland at the time. So I knew at the time that I wanted to be a scientist, but I didn't want to work on the lab bench because I was not patient enough, to be fair, to do that. So that's it. Soon after, essentially, I discovered that, actually, I always wanted to do sales because my father had a bookshop and I was selling with him from the early days. So I had this customer-facing role every time, but just didn't see it very clearly at that time, that I can connect the passion to sales and being with people and navigating people through their journey with my scientific knowledge, essentially. So that's essentially like the nutshell of what happened. But just to give you an overview of my journey specifically, so I did my undergrad in Medical University of Łódź, which is just over here. I was essentially having like a couple of projects with doing some internship during that time. And after this, it's not listed over here, but I tried to expand my knowledge as much as I could. So I did a couple of internships. So I tried to keep them as international as they can be. And I think I managed, because one of them I did was in Hong Kong and the other one was in India. So quite cool places to be and get the expertise of different cultures and how to work together in the lab, essentially. But then after that, I moved to Wrocław, which is another city which is quite big when it comes to science in Poland for biotechnology. And I were there like officially for 2 years, but reality was that after half a year, I went for Erasmus to Vienna, which I was supposed to be there for half a year, but I ended up extending it for another year. So I actually graduated with the project that I did in Vienna, but officially from University of Wrocław. So it was kind of like that kind of journey that I thought I had it set in stone, but essentially I ended up being in Vienna, loving it. The problem was I didn't speak any German, and finding a job there was almost impossible. So that's where I found myself, okay, what do I do? Do I do this PhD, like focus on something here, which I may be able to find, or do I look somewhere else and just give it up, just see where the life takes me? So I decided on the second option, and I decided to start applying for the positions which were related to science. And I must be honest, I didn't know what I was applying for in many cases, because the titles in the commercial world, they just sometimes are crazy. So finding the thing that you want, it's more about reading the job description and seeing if you like it rather than applying for a specific job. So I would say if you look for something outside of academia and you don't know the title, it's completely normal, because I had no clue at that point. So I ended up actually applying for the application scientist role out of many, of course, because I was the first job that you look for. But one of them was an application scientist role at the very early startup called Cytomos. Some of the people from Edinburgh may know the company because they've been around since 2000, I think, 15. But at the time, as I joined, I was literally the fourth person in the company, the only lady in the team, the only biotechnologist. All of the other guys were like full-on engineers, right? So it was quite an interesting move, because I found myself in a completely different environment. We were working in a room that didn't have a proper lab, so we were going to the university. I spent lots of time at the QMRI in the flow cytometry lab, because I was trying to confirm some of the finds that I found on the bench in the office, basically in the lab. So that was very interesting, but it was kind of a role that allowed me to do two things. I would say stay in science, but also do a lot of commercial work, because application scientist normally is a role that the company already has a product, and your job is to introduce the product to customer and you train the customer on the product. We were way earlier, we didn't have a product, so I had to figure out how the product will fit into the market. So I was also going to lots of conferences. I was helping our CEO with finding investors. So it was all about pitching the potential product and potential possibilities that the product has. So it was very commercial, and I think more commercial than scientific in some ways. And I actually enjoyed that part even more than being in the lab. So what happened then? I didn't know that I can move into sales, because in my head I would need to have some sort of business title, or I had to do some management, as a degree to get there. But then I started getting some offers on LinkedIn. The first one that I got was from Beckman Coulter. So quite a big company, and I was like a recruiter reaching out to me if I would like to consider a sales role. So that's kind of, one of those aha moments when you realize, well, maybe I can actually apply for a sales role. Maybe I already have the expertise. I just didn't know I do. So I went through the interview process. I didn't get that job, but it was quite cool because they sent me to Madrid and they paid for the ticket. So I actually had a very nice day in Madrid. I went and then went back essentially with some experience of going into this proper interview. But that led me to start applying for jobs in sales directly without fearing that I may not be good enough for that job, which I think a lot of us has an imposter syndrome. So I ended up in stem cell technologies as an account manager, actually field scientific sales representative. So that was my first role, this one over here. And that was an interesting time because I joined in April 2020. So as you can imagine, that was literally at the moment when things shut down, right? Interesting thing about this is that normally the sales roles start like the bottom, let's say sales role is kind of inside sales representative. That means that you are more on your emails, like you do the outreach, you try to find new customers and things like that. I joined as a field scientific sales representative, which essentially means the traveler of the team. So what you do is you go and see customers, but it was pandemic, right? So that was quite a challenging time. But it's a paradox of the situation because as the whole world has shifted, I had to find my ways from the very beginning in sales to make them work and find the tools that allow me to do what I do. So actually, I was very successful because the first year I got all of the awards I could essentially in sales. I was like, okay, I think I'm in the right place, Like I thought it was not possible, but I think I'm actually in the right place. So after 1 year, I got promoted to account manager, which is essentially the same role, just better title. But then after that, it's like one of those nice things that you start building your career and you do your things and you do them well. Things start coming your way as well. So I was reached out by my ex-manager now from Syntego, and they hired me for the strategic account manager role, which essentially was focusing on supporting customers only in biotech at that time, which I learned from stem cell that I really loved working with the biotech customers because money was not an issue as much as it is in academia, to be fair. So we could really have a very productive conversations and think actually what we can do to maximize the budget within what we can fit to make it work for them. And then after that, I was promoted to the global strategic account manager, which also it's a lot of words, but essentially it's still the similar role, but I also tend to work with some global pharma accounts globally, right? So it's not just a territory that you have adjusted, it's also you work with the bigger pharma. And then last year, Syntego split up into two companies. Syntego remained, and I became part of Editco Bio, which is the new company that was established. But from all of the tools that Syntego had already, we just expanded on them essentially. So I essentially been here for over 3 years, but it looks in my CV that I split into, or left the company after 2 years. That didn't happen. It's just the nature of the business. So that's like the highest level of that. But I always wanted to want to show you what's the myth versus the reality of sales roles, because that's I think a big one. That a lot of it, or people think about sales as the guys that come with the big suitcase and at your door, knock at your door and try to push the product on you, right? It may be true in some sort of sales roles, true, but I don't think biotech or research in general is one of them, because we don't sell their product. We actually try to help people get the results that they need using, of course, the tool that the company has, but it's never pushing really the product on the potential customer. You try to understand the problem and find the best solution that fits their needs. And if your solution is not one of them, I always say it may not be the best for you. You might want to consider something else, right? At least in my case. Some people think it's a solo job because you have your target, you have to hit it, but it's not the case. You actually collaborate with your team, and it's related to people like application scientists who are showing the product and the technicality of it. You have people from technical support, which are very trained on the product and how to solve the problems and troubleshoot the problems. So you also have your manager that now can help you brainstorm the the different I don't know, aspects of your job, but you also have the team of salespeople usually that can brainstorm with you. Some people think it's just literally talking and presenting, but I would say it's mostly asking questions and actively listening to the answers rather than trying to keep on talking. So I don't tend to present unless it's, of course, a seminar. I do present a different story, but usually my meetings are more conversational and I really want people to tell me what they do and what their struggle is. And the myth is also that the sales is all about the sales target, but actually, in my opinion, is more about relationship building and becoming a true partner in your client's science rather than anything else. And I always say that for me, the biggest success would be to hear that one of my clients either IPO'd, so let's say the biotech became very successful when they went on the stock market and they were successful, or somebody will get a Nobel Prize maybe, and I had like a little brick that added to that. So that would be my success. It's not my direct success, but I would feel like I had a little brick added to that one. So that's essentially the way I think about it. And then when sales, I like people sometimes ask me like what if I don't fit, like what if I don't have the skills? So I always want to say when it's not going to be for you, right? I would start with that one. It's when you crave consistency over change. I think that's the main thing that it's very dynamic. So you will be changing the clients you work with because of how the company is evolving. The more successful the company, the more changes will be happening because you will need to get smaller, essentially, territory. So your client base will be changing. If you're not competitive, like even slightly, because you are, and I'm not saying competitive against other people, it's more competitive against yourself. Like, can you beat your own target in a way next quarter? I think that's one of those things that, and be creative about it to find the different ways of getting there, right? Because as I said, it's not about hitting the target, it's more about helping more people. So how can you help more people essentially in that case? And if you prefer data over the dialogue, I would say maybe it's not one. I mean, data is very important, but I think the dialogue and the conversation and human relationships are very important to make it work. So that's why the next point is if you are drained by social interaction, maybe that's not the best role for you. And also if you are not willing to work hard. So if you want to have an easy job that is 9 to 5 and you just want to do your things and just go home, that's fine, right? But I would say in sales, that won't work because there is always a little bit of a pressure, which I actually personally very much like about that job. But I always say that there are other commercial roles that may fit people who don't fit into that criteria. So there are like technical support specialist roles, so people who are very educated and they have the expertise and then just provide the feedback and troubleshooting. So there are some additional things in the commercial organization that may fit people like that, but doesn't have to be sales specifically. And when sales role is for you, any other case, I would say. And here is why you should consider it. One, you will still be a scientist, so your technical understanding will be very much required. So coming from your lab background, you have the grasp of like different laboratory assays and operational procedures, and this knowledge can be really your gateway to understanding your sales audience and at a deeper level, so you can really connect with people this way. You will have first-hand access to the groundbreaking science because people really share with you what they are working on, and they are involved in those scientific developments that you wouldn't hear of them from the news yet. It's way earlier than that, and you learn every day. Building relationships, it's really nice because you build your network very easily, and then you go to conference and everybody is your friend essentially, and you can develop really strong interpersonal skills while doing so. So in sales, this relationship is really key to make anything work, because we always say that people buy from people, people don't buy from salespeople. All right, so it's really about being you, and then you need to understand their goals, so your customer goals, and establish the trust in the long-term success. So it's not a very short-term thing. You need to think long-term when it comes to that. Career growth. It's also quite important thing. So sales experience can open doors to many different paths, including like product manager, business development, leadership roles. And what I always say that when you look at the CEOs of the companies, they used to have sales experience because they need to understand the product, they need to understand the customers and how it fits in everything to even get the funding, right? Because I think finding investor is very similar to finding your client because they need to believe in you and your product. So yeah, you can definitely progress in that role and you can move into different areas of the business. It's very stimulating environment as well. So it opens the door to different social settings, conferences, internal and external meetings. You find different tactics and you connect with really fascinating individuals and that ones that work on the very innovative project. And I think the last but not least is commission. So actually, it's one of those jobs that offer very nice commission schemes. So first, I think sales is one of the higher end pay role in companies in general because you are the ones that bring money to the company. If you don't exist, the company doesn't exist essentially. And in order for you to motivate you to hit your target, you have some commissions. So on top of your base salary, you also have the target. Like when you hit your target, you get additional earnings. So I would say that the financial rewards in scientific roles can be really huge motivator compared to the basic salary. And the reality is that technically your salary is in your hands. So if you're willing to sacrifice maybe 3 months and work really, really hard, but get really nice commission at the end, you are able to do that. If you have, of course, like I would say like that's a bit more challenging to sit back and relax completely because then your managers may come after you, but you don't have to be on a complete push all the time, right? But you have the control over your salaries as well. And what skills you need to be successful, there are a lot of them here that actually are related also to science. So you will really see that we need to have an analytical thinking, planning ahead. You need to be adaptable. You have to have a problem-solving mindset. You need to be very well with time management. You need to be persistent. And sometimes, like if you don't hear from someone, you still need to follow up because sometimes people just forget about your email and that happens, or they forgot about your call. You need to remind them. But you need to have empathy as well to do that, not to overwhelm people. You need to have the attention to detail and lots of active listening will be involved. So you need to really listen to what customer is saying them. And then you need to clearly communicate back to them the solutions and how we can deal with that. And then what skills you don't need on the flip side, any business or marketing background, which I thought was something that was necessary. You don't have to be aggressive or pushy. You can still be very bubbly and it's very much okay. You don't have to have ability to convince everyone. It's also fine to step back and say, okay, this is not working. Maybe it's not going to be the best fit for you. Just go somewhere else. It's fine. You don't have to be actually an extrovert, which I think is a big one. Lots of people think that you have to be very outgoing. And like I have lots of colleagues who are actually quite introverted, but they are great sales reps. And these guys usually work very, very well with academia because it's very scientific-based conversation. And that's why also you don't have to be very talkative and you don't have to have answer to everything. You can always come back and say to customer, especially at the early stage that, look, I actually don't know, and it's very much fine. I'll just talk to my team and come back to you in an email tomorrow. And that's completely fine. So with that, I know that we are like on the time almost, so I want you to have some questions. But as I mentioned, the Lab to Sales program, I think we've just covered the first 2 parts of this, and I didn't have time to talk to you and like see if you have any questions. So let me know if you have any. But if you wanted to follow up with additional things, so why your lab experience matter, like why is it very important, how we can transition your skills into that, what are the sales position, how they are called, how to apply for them, what company says to fit your needs as well, because that also will depend on your personality, same as your product that you will be selling, because there are different types of them. And then the last but not least is how to get hired and some additional tools that can help you basically do that transition. So if you're interested, let me know after today. But I always say that, it's very easy to teach a scientist sales. It's very hard to teach science to a salesperson. So I think that being a scientist is a huge advantage already for you if you want to thrive in that environment. And with that, I will pass on to Melody and Fernando, and then we can take any questions.
Thank you so
Brilliant talk.
You gave us a lot to think about, for sure. Should we take the questions now?
Yeah, I think if you want to kick off, we can then see if people if anyone has any questions. I mean, I have many, but if anyone wants to come ahead with a question, otherwise we can kick off the session.
You can unmute yourself or even type it in the chat. Fernando, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warm up the crowd.
So I think, I mean, we knew this already, but thank you both, because it was like brilliant to hear from both experiences. And a common theme that I think I noticed, and I would like you to comment on that, is of course it's scary to transition into a different role, but the importance of realizing that we do have the transferable skills that sometimes it takes, and is whether this is coming from our scientific path or our personal experiences, is important to realize that we do have what it takes to transition in these new roles. And I would like to know from you guys how important was for you at the beginning to have those skills, to have the to realize that you were able to do that new job. Let's say your first month in, how like good it felt for you, like to be like, oh, I actually do know how to do this. It's completely different from the lab work, but I know what I'm doing. What's the feeling like, and like how you keep on building on that?
Elisa,
Either of you.
Go ahead.
So yeah, for me, I think at the end of the journey, when I was applying for all of the roles, it became kind of clearer what I preferred when I was like narrowing down the list of things in the role that was required for the job. So I knew, for example, in this case, that I would need to have communication skills. I would have to have the presentation skills. And I think it's all about, either writing a cover letter that maximizes all of the things based on the offer. So I think like whenever you have an offer you're interested in, try to pick the skills they're looking for. And if you write a cover letter, justify them, like why you think you have all of those things if you didn't have them before. So for me, it was like lots of application. It was quite some time ago as well, but definitely you can clearly see some of the transferable skills. And I think highlighting them and adding them to your CV will be a crucial thing to make it work and make people believe you as well.
So in my case, I think the first answer, and pretty obvious, is that I really needed to understand what I was reading. So having, a scientific background is a taken. I mean, if you don't understand molecular biology or you are not familiar with cardiovascular research, it's really difficult to be an editor. So that's the obvious answer. For me, it was actually really difficult adjusting at first, because at the beginning I tried to have a point of view was more of the reviewer point of view. So I was looking at all the details, the graphs, or if something was looking a little bit odd on, I don't know, on the facts plot, I was like, this is really bad. But this is not to me to judge, because the technical part is actually assessed by the referees. And then the other very difficult thing, and sometimes silly, is to deal with people you used to read their papers and think, oh my God, these are great scientists, and then they submit you something that is really preliminary or really bad, and you are going to reject it, and you feel like, how am I supposed to do this? I mean, why are they putting me in charge of this? So this was the most difficult part. Sometimes I still feel a little bit odd about it, because we receive submissions from all over the world, and so sometimes I just feel this is not this is weird, and why should I But once you adjust in the role and you actually put, things in place and you actually have a very thorough assessment and the manuscript just doesn't have what it takes to be sent out, you're just making a very clean and a professional decision. So this is just your role. You just need to adjust into it. But those were the most difficult things at the beginning for me.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
sharing.
It's inspiring to hear your talks and see that we don't we have alternative options. We don't have to keep struggling in what we're doing and then try to make it work, and we basically have to know ourselves better and know what is try something different. Like you said, Zofia, you were like reading the advertisements to kind of see what you would like, and kind of like look more into the tasks that are required for the job and not necessarily look for titles, because sometimes they don't really reflect what you read. So it's about knowing ourselves better as well. But going back to academia a bit, do you think that you miss anything from the academic world? Are there things now that you think back on and then you feel, okay, we were doing better in research and academia, or are we a little bit far behind maybe, or are we doing things more like the conventional way? How do you feel when you look back at now that you've left academia? What are things that you miss and maybe things that you don't miss anymore? Is that a tricky question?
It is a tricky question, but like I think that the first thing is what Elisa was also saying. Like for me, when I transitioned, not even from academia, but from scientific role, that application scientist, when I was still doing science, it was in my head like the job just that like the job is you in a way, like my science is me, right? So it was cool to be a scientist in an early startup doing some cool science and moving to initially just a sales role. Like I had a clash in my head. It was like, it's not cool. Like sales is not cool. It's just something that people do. And like, because I also had the misconception of what it actually was. I started realizing that it was like consultative, really job that was a bit nicer than for me. But then looking back at academia, I noticed how much struggle there is with the finances, that you want to do certain science and you just cannot do the things you want to do. You just need to fit within the budget. And it's just very challenging, I think. So I think that the commercial roles have a little bit less of that, but I would say that, I mean, I don't work, of course, in like a big biotech or pharma as a scientist, but I know that that comes with an additional challenge, which is your project is not your baby anymore. The turnaround of the project is very high. So that's what I hear from scientists in pharma. They're like, I really love that project. I signed up to be a scientist on this project, and it can be killed at the very last minute when you're almost about to make a discovery. And you need to be ready for something like that. So I think there's the pros and cons is in academia, challenge is money, but you have your project, which is your baby, and you will work on it until you can discover something, or as long as you have the funding and grants for it. But this is your baby. In academia, outside of academia, any job that you do, it's not your baby anymore. It's other people's baby that like you support them grow it essentially. So you are like a nurse in a way on the side, but it's not your baby anymore. So I think that's the biggest change. And I do miss sometimes the scientific aspect of it when being the leader of a project that can change lives, right? I do miss that component, but as I told you, I think it was shift in my brain, like figuring, like realizing that this is what I like doing, actually. This is the job that I actually really enjoy on the day to day, and I'm willing to, work hard to make it work because I can see clearly like my growth, I can see the reward, and all of that. So I really enjoy that aspect, and then try to think about me contributing to other people's science as the brick in their science, which I think, I don't build the massive castle, but I put the bricks in everybody's castle, which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's a nice way to see it. What
Well,
about you, Elisa?
yeah, in my case, I think my answer relates to what Zofia just said in a way. So, not having my own project was a really, I was really missing it at the beginning. So on one side, I have to say I'm lucky because I still have articles that have been published, and some are are going to be published in the future. So in a way, I still have some projects that are not completely finished. So I left something behind that is going to see light, hopefully, in the future. But I also have to say that it's actually one of the positive things not having to, deal with your own project, because it actually, I get to talk about science all day, but it's not my own. So I enjoy talking about science, and I don't feel the stress and the pressure about having to finish the project, having to find funding, having to write grants, having to compete with others, having to stay in line and wait for my turn to get to be assistant professor. So that kind of stress that I left behind, it's like the most positive thing about changing job. So there are no job with no stress. So we do deal with stress ourselves, but it's a different kind. And I was really done with that kind of attitude. And so this is I think this is the things I miss the most are also those that I was really happy to leave behind. I know it's a little bit complicated, probably.
Yeah, it's also about, like who is your PI, for example, right? Like what kind of politics is within the lab and the university you are a part of. Sometimes
Yeah.
it can be very toxic. And I heard some nightmare stories from some labs. So yeah, I think like it's not as toxic in the commercial world as it is sometimes in academia. So that's another. I mean, like I may be wrong because maybe I had it wrong, but like I just heard some stories and I don't think it happens as much outside of academia.
Well, in my case, it was not a stress that the PIs were putting on me. I was putting the stress by myself because I really wanted to get there on the top of the mountain. That was my goal. That was, as I said, the main issue was that I thought that the job and the projects were defining myself and my value as a person. So to finally detach from that was really the most challenging part. And but it's really, looking back at it, it's really healthy to realize that you are a scientist, but you're also a person, and you might do something else. Now I support scientists. I support authors to publish their own stories. Sometimes I'm not jealous. I'm just, amazed by the studies and the results I read. And yeah, maybe in a way I think, well, I wish I did something like that in my career, but without any jealousy about it. It's just, I'm really happy to help them get the story published,
Thank you both for sharing that. Yeah.
Has a question?
So I think we still have time for a quick question if anyone has one. In the meantime, I wanted to say, Elisa, you put us on a tough spot because for a second we didn't know whether to invite you to discuss your latest paper or like as an editor. So we know you have a few papers still coming out from those postdocs here. So we are aware of that. We've been reading those.
It's
Miron, I think you have a question. You can unmute yourself. Feel free to do so.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you both for really providing insights from how your transition was and what is exciting and not exciting in your new positions. I have a kind of maybe more like a philosophical question for Elisa. We see that in comparison to 20 or 25 years ago or 30 years ago, PhD curriculums are now shifting more toward soft skills or transferable skills. So previously we were always engaged into doing hard science stuff, and now we see that universities are really putting a lot of emphasis on skills that are not purely academic, but also can be explored and exploited in other professions. So I'm just wondering, what do you think from your perspective? Now you had transitioned to the non-academic part, but still you are somewhere in between, I would say, because being an editor is not so far away from academia. What do you think when you remember your selection process for this role, which I think was probably very strict and rigorous, because the journal is pretty, it's not some journal, it's one of the journals. What do you think for the PhD students that are currently working on their PhD thesis, how much and to what soft skills they should pay attention if they want to have this like a safety net for these type of jobs that you are currently working?
Okay, so I'm having some connection issues. So you were all frozen for a moment. So I hope everything works. That's an interesting question. So yeah, the selection was really thorough, and I had to do some so they send you some you have to prove that you can actually do the job, let's say. What I think it's important, as I said, is that you need to show a broad interest in science. So that means that you actually like to read papers. You are not looking only at what is related to your project, and okay. You were all frozen. I don't know how much you
And you
heard.
too, but now, no, I think we heard everything other than the final bit, and you are frozen at the present time.
That's really challenging. Anyway, I'll try to be quick. Okay, I don't know if it's me or if it's everybody, but I keep having connection issues.
Try to turn off the video if you
Yeah,
want.
maybe you can turn off the video.
Yeah,
It will
let's
relax
try.
the connection a little bit.
Let's try. Yeah, as I was saying, I think having the willing to read a lot and to try to understand things that are outside of your comfort zone, it's the first thing when you want to transition to something like becoming an editor. And the problem solving also is really important, because when you, I don't know, you receive the report from the referees and there are two referees asking for opposite things or for something that is too much and it's outside of the scope of the manuscript, you need to be able to understand what they're asking for. Is that reasonable? Does it take years to do this kind of experiment or not? So it's more like going deeper into projects of somebody else. So you need to think fast and be able to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. And also you get pitched from manuscript and stories when you meet editors, when you meet authors at conference or lab visit, or you do video calls. And also in that case, you need to be able to listen, to process very quickly what they're telling you, what is the story about, what is missing, what are the things that they should add to make the manuscript interesting for the journal. And you need to react fast and tell them immediately, because you are face to face or in a video call. So this is the kind of soft skills that need to, but I think it's something also that you can train. So maybe it's something that at the beginning it's really hard to do, but you have 6 months training. So you always have an editor that can be with you during the first calls, and you learn on the job how to do it. And it's also I think it takes years and experience to reach, I don't know, some levels. As everything else in life, you don't reach a goal without training, and this is true also for this kind of job. And so I think it's more important your mindset. And as Zofia said, you cannot teach a salesman to be a scientist, and it's the same thing for editors. First of all, you're a scientist and you know how to think, and then you learn how to do the rest of the job.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Elisa. And I think we can now close the Q&A session because I'm aware of the time. But before we conclude, I really want to thank again Elisa and Zofia for their talks. Very inspirational. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy we have these resources with us so we can share this recording with anyone that is interested or might become interested in like what shall I do if I want to move outside of academia. Also, before we close this session, I just wanted to mention our next meeting is on the 21st of July, and we are going back to discuss some science. And just to mix it up and to make sure we don't discuss only after-related projects, but we broaden our interest from time to time, we are discussing this project that you see on screen right now. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining, and please join us next month for more science. It was a pleasure having you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for this